Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, my name is Kaelyn. I'm a master's student at the University of Oxford studying history, and in the fall I'll be starting my PhD at Yale University in history and African American studies. I have been posting that I've been studying for the LSAT, and I know that many of my followers are quite confused because I've been accepted to a PhD program. Why do I need to be studying for the LSAT? So I have a bunch of different questions from you guys that I wanted to answer in a Q&A video, so I'm going to be addressing some things about law school, some things about why I'm studying for the LSAT. I'm going to talk about my dissertation a little bit. I have a bunch of different questions that I received from you guys. So if you guys ever want your questions answered, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, because that's pretty much where I communicate more directly with my subscribers and with my followers. Either leave them down in a comment below and I will reply, or you can shoot me a message on Instagram or reply to one of my Instagram stories. So this Q&A is going to be a little bit long and it's going to be a little all over the place, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Somebody asked, what was my favorite part about Oxford? And my favorite part about Oxford was my friends and my college and my supervisor. I can't really pick between the three. I really loved those aspects of Oxford in particular. I met the most incredible people within my MCR at Somerville College, and I got to work with one of the best scholars in my field. My supervisor is incredible, and I really appreciate her helping me, and I really wish that I was able to work with her more in person. Somebody asked, did you ask your undergrad professors for advice on your grad school personal statements? So I did ask my undergraduate professors what Oxford and Cambridge were going to be looking for in my statement of purpose when I did apply, though I did not have any of them edit it. I actually don't believe I had anyone edit my statement of purpose for Oxford, but I got a lot of advice. I asked people at UCLA, but I also asked people outside of UCLA what kind of things people were looking for in a statement of purpose and how much detail I needed to include about my project and what archives I was going to be using. I talked to current graduate students at UCLA who had graduated from Cambridge or Oxford. I talked to people that had done a master's at Cambridge or a master's at Oxford and had gone on to do a PhD in the US, which is what I was planning to do, and asked if they would be willing to let me look at their original statement of purpose. Oftentimes, a grad student that is willing to help upcoming grad students will just offer up their statement of purpose for you to check out, but you're allowed to ask. Just be polite about it. Just know that sometimes people are pretty private about those things, and that's okay if they don't want to share it, but some grad students are really helpful and are more than willing to share their statement of purpose with younger upcoming grad students. So just ask and try to get to know them, and they'll actually tell you a lot about what schools are looking for. And if that doesn't work, then you can always reach out to a consultant. I definitely reach out to a couple different people, including current graduate students, professors at UCLA, outside of UCLA, as well as admissions counselors. So the one question I got asked the most is how I am staying positive and motivated during this rather uncertain time. And if you guys saw my last video, you may have seen that I don't handle it very well at all times. I have definitely had my moments where I am feeling really down and really worried about my future and about the present and what's going to happen with me and my research and my family. My grandfather had a stroke right when California initiated this shelter-in-place policy, and he's supposed to be coming home next week. So with that, in addition to everything else, I have been really cautious and very concerned about getting sick or passing on anything to my grandparents in particular. So that has definitely been weighing on my mind. But one thing that has kept me going is knowing that there are certain things I do have control over. I said this in my last video. Basically what I said in this rant was that we all respond to stress differently, and some people will overcompensate and be incredibly busy, and others feel debilitated and incredibly anxious and feel like they lack control. There's kind of two sides of that spectrum. You can fall anywhere on that spectrum. And I'm no psychologist. This is not an expert assessment, but I know that for me, being in control of a certain set of things is what helps me kind of maintain my sanity. So maintaining a clean space at all times has been really important for me. It always has. And then also keeping a to-do list, kind of keeping a daily schedule. Although I can't plan too far ahead, I can't really even plan 2 days ahead. I can plan for the now. I can plan for what I'm going to do with my time when I am at home. So I've been using that to study for the LSAT. I've been working on my dissertation. I've been focusing on different aspects of my business on YouTube, Instagram, my consulting business, my website. So for me, having an analytical mind, it is much better for me to kind of throw myself into work. And so that's how I've been keeping myself motivated and positive. And don't worry, I definitely have those moments where it's really difficult, but it's just about rolling with the punches and figuring out how to best serve yourself. And this is something that I also think is really important, that productivity isn't only about being productive in the kind of capitalist sense, in that you are not just a machine to produce capital. You are not just a machine to kind of produce a product. You also can be productive with your time in that you are using your time to take care of yourself and to better yourself. So while part of that is going to be focusing on your academics or focusing on your work or focusing on a new project, that also means taking the time to rest. That means taking the time to heal. That means taking the time to focus on your mental health. And so all of those things I would deem productive. I think we need to change the definition of how we define productivity in order to allow for rest and allow for us to be healthy and to take care of ourselves. Often productivity is seen as only working and working to produce something. And I don't think that necessarily has to be the case, because you cannot produce something if you are not healthy. All right, so someone asked, how did I get into African American history? So if you guys don't know, my research is primarily on the history of slavery and the British Atlantic during the colonial and revolutionary periods in America. In addition to my interest in historical aspects of African American history, I'm very much invested in current activism for anti-racism and the Black Lives Matter movement, and trying to act as an ally as best I can and continuing to educate myself. I study history, but I also study African American studies and will be doing both at Yale. The question being, why did I get into African American history, is a bit of a long story, but ultimately it began with my studying Thomas Jefferson. I really revered Thomas Jefferson as a child. He was my favorite president. I thought he was the epitome of optimism. I thought that he was an incredible philosophical thinker and statesman, but I kind of always skirted the question of slavery and his involvement with Sally Hemings as a teenager whenever the question would kind of come up. And in community college, while I was healing from a riding accident where I had to have shoulder surgery, I started really reading up on Thomas Jefferson. I started listening to the Thomas Jefferson Hour podcast, and I just got really invested in Sally Hemings and her story and her family. I read Annette Gordon Reed's An American Controversy. I read them Hemings' Monticello, and I had this epiphany that I had spent all this time trying to kind of deny the involvement of Jefferson in the institution of slavery, and also his involvement with a 14-year-old girl. And that really changed my perspective on how to view my own biases and how I address the world around me and the people around me. And I just found it really horrifying that, as someone who really does believe in loving everyone and caring for everyone and doing good, I had had all these kind of preconceived notions about race, and I entered UCLA with the mission of correcting that. It is a lifelong commitment, so I've really dedicated myself to not only understanding the work of anti-racism and activism, but also trying to also include that in my academic work. I think that if we continue to saturate the field of history with the focus on white men or even white women, that we are denying the histories and the importance of other historical actors, and that there is so much more to be studied when it comes to the history of enslavement. In America, we have a lot to learn about Indigenous history. There is just so much more to learn about non-white history. And I think that that's why it's important, and that's why I study it. And I think that it'll hopefully inform my later work as an attorney and as a scholar, and it's something that I'm deeply invested in, and I think that more scholars should be. Someone asked me, how do you deal with loneliness in grad school? So this is something that I think is definitely an issue in grad school. It is a very isolating environment, but I don't think it has to be. I think that academics tend to stick to themselves and kind of stay within their bubble. And I think that we needed to kind of break that trend a little bit. That's why I started this YouTube channel, was to break down the barrier between academia and the ivory tower and the public. I think that there is a lot of work that academics are doing, which is incredibly important to humanity and to our understanding of human nature and human history. The problem is that it kind of just stays within its field. It doesn't ever actually reach the public audience. With that being said, academics typically tend to run with academics. And so the problem there is that academics are usually very introverted and are very socially awkward, and our work is also not very social because we're sitting in archives, or we're sitting in a library, or we're working in a lab. But I think that a way to kind of curb that is to make ties outside of academia, to make ties outside of our own fields. And that's something that I really liked about the Oxford College system, is that the MCR is just full of a bunch of graduate students from a bunch of different fields. I had a friendship group that had people in classics, that had people in computer science, history, political science. There's a whole mix, and I think that that provides a really unique perspective. And the way that you kind of deal with loneliness is, one, from trying to remove yourself from the academic environment. You don't always have to work in your lonely apartment. You don't always have to work at the library alone. I think that we can try to find people to study with. I think we need to figure out ways to be more social and have more outings. And I think also try to make connections outside of your particular field. Attend events, try to kind of step out of your bubble. That is definitely an issue in graduate programs, and that's something that we should address, and I'm hoping that that's something I help you guys with on this channel. So someone asked, do you feel that writing in academia is a form of elitism, classism, to uphold status quo? Yes. I think that unknowingly it is. I think that, as I said before, academia kind of runs in its own bubble. Everyone talks to one another, and that's kind of just how it stays. But the problem with that is that when you just have a group of people only talking with one another, you kind of build this vernacular, and you build this vocabulary which is only accessible to that group. I mention this in pretty much every graduate seminar that I am led into, is talking about how academic writing can be so inaccessible to a public audience, and that the reason book sales for academics are down, and then why public intellectuals or biographers are getting the big book deals, is because we don't write in a way which is accessible. And I will say that I have found quite a few historians that write really beautifully and that are accessible. Joanne Freeman's work is incredible. Annette Gordon-Reed, Peter Onif, Clay Jenkinson. I mean, their work is incredible, and I think that it is actually accessible, but a lot of the work that we read is not. I mean, if you've ever tried to read Syed, I can't even understand it, and I've been in academia for a while now. So I think that that's something that historians in particular, or at least early Americanist historians that I know, are really trying to focus on. I was really lucky to have an advisor for undergrad who really hammered in writing clearly and writing well, and I greatly appreciate him for that. I think that he made me a better writer, and I am in his debt forever because I just truly appreciate how much he changed my writing, and I think that that's something as academics we need to focus on, and that should be a goal for the field. And I think that if we bridge that gap between our work and the public, that not only will our work get better, and not only will our work be more well recognized, but it will also make it so that way our work is being accessed and is being helpful. And that's the point, is it not? I think that the goal should not just be to revolutionize the field, to bring in a new perspective and to bring in a new argument, but also I think that the goal should be to make our work more widely read and So that's my 2 cents on it. I have many opinions on this and I'm happy to rant about it during an Instagram live, but I'm sure this video is getting incredibly long and you guys are ready to hear about why the heck I want to go to law school. So let's go ahead and get into those questions. So the Ladies Who Law School podcast actually asked me, why do you want to go to law school? So as I said before, there are injustices in our society related to race that persist from the colonial period, actually persist all throughout human history, that has had a deep impact on the way that we criminalize certain people in our justice system. And originally I thought I wanted to go into criminal law and prosecution, but ultimately when I think about my work and I think about my goals, I'm more deeply focused on the research aspects of law versus acting as a prosecutor in litigation. I am deeply invested in constitutional law and constitutional precedents and how racial biases have kind of been embedded in the legal system today. So criminal justice reform and other aspects of constitutional law on the federal and state level is something that I'm deeply passionate about and something that I think that my study of early America would greatly benefit from. And I think that historians have a very unique perspective on law if that's what you've studied as a historian, and I have a very, very long way to go, but that's why I want to get into law. I see issues with racial and gendered bias in our legal system that deeply impacts the lives of thousands of people, and so that's why I want to go into law. I don't want to just be a historian. I want to be able to actually put my historical knowledge into practice, and originally I wanted to just go to law school, but as I started studying history and as I started studying the institution of slavery, I saw so many parallels to the way that we talk about African American people today and how our legal system criminalizes them. I think that the death penalty is an abhorrent system, and I want to be part of the reform that gets rid of it in this country. I could go on forever about why I want to go into law, but that's the short of it. I see a lot of issues with our criminal justice system and I want to be part of changing it. So someone said, can you please share what you've used to prepare for the LSAT? So I have tried a bunch of different study techniques. I have tried self-study, I tried Blueprint, I tried Manhattan, and ultimately settled on the LSAT Prep Max course. So this course is fully online and they have an application for your phone and for your tablet. As I get through the course, I'm going to do a review of this particular course and a how-to guide, as well as talk about why I think that it is the best deal. With the money that you're going to pay for LSAT prep, you want to make sure that you're spending it wisely. I have spent thousands of dollars on LSAT prep, and it is so important to find the right course because you can waste so much money and so much time. As someone who's deeply invested in getting into law school and increasing my score, I wanted to make sure that I was investing in the right course. So if you guys are studying for the LSAT as well and you want to check out LSAT Prep Max, I'm going to leave my referral code down below, and if you guys want to help me out, then please click that and that would be greatly appreciated. Check it out for yourself and see if it's something you'd be interested in. I really like the structure of it. I really like the lectures, and I am hoping that it pays off. So someone said, you mentioned applying to Harvard Law. How would that work with doing a PhD at Yale? So it's not unheard of, and I will talk about this more if I actually get in, which please. I really like the system at Harvard Law as well as Yale Law, and I'm hoping that I get the LSAT score, which will put me in the running to apply to those schools and hopefully get in. I can do a PhD at Yale and a law degree at Harvard, though crossing units is a bit challenging. There are several logistical factors that I should probably discuss in a separate video, otherwise this one's going to be entirely too long. But essentially, the American Bar Association states that you cannot cross units between another program and the law school and have it count for your law degree if you have not matriculated in the law school yet. So essentially, my plan is to do the first year of my PhD and then do the first year of my law degree and then kind of cross units from there and have the work for my PhD count for my law degree and vice versa. But that is all contingent on me actually getting a high enough LSAT score to get into those programs. Both programs at YLS and at Harvard are obviously top notch. They're in the top 3 of the US rankings, and I would be blessed beyond belief. It'd be a miracle to get into those schools. So I'm not entirely holding my breath. I have a couple different contingency plans if I don't get in this cycle, but ultimately I will go where the funding is the best and where I get in. So we'll see. I am obviously still in the planning stages right now, and so I don't want to put my eggs in one basket and only apply to YLS. I'm just praying I get a high enough LSAT score that I can get in. I am studying really hard and hope that it pays off, but I am not sure, guys. I'm not perfect, and it takes an essentially perfect score to get into those schools. All right, so this is the last question that I'm gonna answer. What are your career plans post law and PhD? So ultimately, I would love to clerk for a federal judge, and I would ultimately like to end up back in legal academia and practicing as a constitutional lawyer. How I get there is basically up to chance and up to where I get into law school and what internships I take. I have talked to a bunch of different legal history professors. I have talked to a bunch of different practicing attorneys in regulatory law, in criminal law, in civil litigation. I've talked to a bunch of different people, and basically the answers range, and it's also very much dependent on who you know. I have been very, very lucky with my career trajectory thus far in my life, and I can state without a shadow of a doubt that getting a job is as much to do with your credentials as it has to do with who you know. I'm not exactly sure how I will end up back in academia as a legal historian, but time will tell, and however I get there is, as I said, essentially up to chance and up to opportunity and who I know at the time. So I have a pretty specific idea of what it is I want to do, what kind of scholarship I want to produce. So we will see. All right, so we've now come to the end of the video. I did not answer every question that was given to me because there was a lot of them, but if you have any questions that were not answered in this video, please leave them in a comment down below or shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm always happy to talk with you guys and give you guys advice, or even just chat if you guys need a friend. So please feel free to reach out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you guys did, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps my channel, and subscribe if you are not, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.
He started with hello on a summer afternoon. I lost myself and everybody else when I found you.